These are the 5 schools that are too difficult to rebuild in the EA Sports College Football 25. Rebuilding a lower caliber school into a powerhouse is so much harder than it used to be. You used to be able to throw in games like ncaa 14, pick any team, and then create a dynasty in just a handful of seasons. That was all before college football changed forever, with the addition of NIL and the transfer portal. Now, these smaller schools just don't have the funds to be able to compete with bigger schools like Texas or LSU. Plus, even if you now commit a good player to your school, they could just transfer out the next year and play for a better team or play for a team that's going to give them more money. So not only do you have to be skilled at recruiting, but also you have to be skilled at retaining those players and making them happy. So yeah, these 5 teams are going to be too difficult for you to rebuild. The first team on this list is the Charlotte 49ers. Last year they were 3-9. And not a single player on offense, other than their quarterback, had more than 500 yards, period. They averaged a measly 17 points per game. Their quarterback only had 4 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. Their offensive line also allowed a sack on a little over 9% of their passing plays. On defense, it wasn't much better because they allowed just under 29 points per game. So they are going to be an insanely difficult team to try to rebuild. The second team on this list is the Eastern Michigan Eagles. Last year they were 6-7, and they didn't have a single receiver with over 500 yards. Their running backs are what did most of the work for them on offense, but their leading rusher still only had 600 yards. They averaged just 19.5 points per game, and their quarterback had a 9-7 touchdown to interception ratio. Their offensive line as well allowed a sack on 9% of passing plays. But as a team, they couldn't hold on to the ball. They fumbled the football 13 times last year. And on defense, they still allowed 27 points per game. The third team on the list is the Kennesaw State Owls. They were 3-6 last year, and they were still playing non-FBS teams. So this is going to be even worse probably this year, playing on all FBS schedule. They did not have a single wide receiver with over 400 yards. They focused primarily on running the ball, but only had one player end up with over 500 yards rushing. Their starting QB did have a solid season as a 5th-year senior, but he's not going to be coming back, so they're going to be turning the reins over to an untested young QB and giving him the chance to start when he's only started in 1 college game so far in his career. On offense, Kennesaw State averaged 26 points per game, which was pretty solid, but it was mainly because they scored 63 points in the last game of the season. On defense, though, they allowed 18 points per game. But their kicker was 5 for 13 on field goals last season. Yikes. This is the team that I personally am going to be rebuilding in College Football 25. So if you guys want to see me fail miserably at this challenge, make sure to hit that sub button and see it. But let's move on to number 4. Number 4 is the Kent State Golden Flashes. They were 1-11 last year. Their starting QB didn't even throw for 1,000 yards. And 600 of those yards went to one receiver. Running-wise, they only had one player with 500 yards, and they averaged an atrocious 14.7 points per game. They also almost allowed 35 points per game. That is a blowout in pretty much every single game. And to add to that, they got sacked on 13% of their passing plays. This team is probably one of the hardest, period, to try to rebuild. But before I get to the last team, clearly all 5 teams on this list need more than a miracle to turn their franchise around. Do you guys have what it takes? Let me know in the comments, what team are you guys going to be rocking with when the game comes out in July? The 5th team on the list is the Sam Houston State Bearcats. They were 3-9 last year as their first year in FBS, but they did not have a single player rush for even 400 yards. Their passing attack was the main way that they scored points because they had 2,500 yards through the air. Their leading receiver had 700 of them. They ended up averaging 20 points per game on offense, but they allowed just under 27 points per game on defense, and they allowed over 400 yards each game. They also, in addition, had a problem with fumbling the football, as they fumbled the football 13 times last year. You know, with these newer schools having smaller stadiums and smaller fan bases, how big of an impact do you guys think that that's going to make on the new game with the home field advantage? I would assume all 5 of these teams are pretty much going to be receiving almost nothing for benefits for home field advantage. What do you guys think? I would also like to see your thoughts on one of these videos.